The Jockey Who Won While Dead, part of our Life Story series. Imagine this. It's a warm June day in 1923 at New York's iconic Belmont Park. A 22-year-old Irish immigrant named Frank Hayes is climbing into the saddle for literally the race of his life. You see, he'd worked for years as a trainer and a stableman, just waiting for his chance to ride as a pro. Well, today was that chance. But his journey ends in an outcome so impossible, it makes him the only jockey in history to win an official race while deceased. Let's dive into the documented facts of how this unbelievable event actually unfolded. Section 1. Verified Case Overview. Belmont Park, 1923. Born in Ireland in 1901, Frank emigrated to the US and settled in Brooklyn. He spent years around horses, training them, caring for them, really building that instinct of a true horseman. But he'd never ridden professionally before June 4th, 1923. That afternoon, he got his first and ultimately only shot at Belmont Park in Elmont, New York.
Now, this wasn't just any race. It was a steeplechase. We're talking a grueling 2-mile test over 12 massive jumps, specifically designed to push both horse and rider to their absolute limits. His mount was Sweet Kiss, an aging, pretty unremarkable mare going off at steep 20-to-1 odds. Literally nobody expected Hayes or the mare to even finish, let alone win. But, according to the official records, they did exactly that.
Section 2. The life before the race, chasing the dream. So Frank arrived in America with very little, finding his opportunity through the stables. His colleagues remembered him as a dedicated, quiet guy who was constantly learning. His dream was simple, to ride professionally. And that chance came from an unlikely place. A horse owner named Miss Frayling needed a last-minute replacement jockey for Sweet Kiss. She was incredibly skeptical, but Frank managed to talk her into letting him ride. There was just one massive physical hurdle in his way.
Here was the brutal reality. Frank weighed 142 pounds, but the official racing limit was exactly 130 pounds. That 12-pound gap? That is highly dangerous for a jockey. Carrying too much weight could completely kill their chances. But Frank insisted. He convinced Frayling he could drop the weight with only days to spare. What followed was an absolutely punishing physical toll in a desperate bid just to qualify.
The timeline of this rapid weight loss is honestly harrowing. In the days before the race, Frank started an extreme regimen, intense exercise, minimal food, and severely restricting his water intake. With less than 24 hours to go before the starting gun, he was still 10 pounds over the limit, so he pushed even harder. Hours of sweating, fasting, just straining his body to the bone. Unbelievably, by race day, he stepped onto the scale and hit exactly 130 pounds.
But making weight came at a terrible cost. Witnesses paying attention as he mounted Sweet Kiss carefully noted his condition. He looked incredibly weak, exhausted. He looked exactly like a man who had pushed his body way past the point of safety.
Section 3. The race. The Belmont Park steeplechase. The track was buzzing, but mainly for the heavy favorite, a horse named Gimme. Sweet Kiss and her unknown rookie jockey? Basically ignored. But when those gates flew open, Frank got her away perfectly. In a complete shock to everyone watching, Sweet Kiss actually accelerated right into an early lead against the favorite.
Think about the sheer physical demands here. 2 miles, 12 massive jumps, full gallop. It is a brutal test of nerve and endurance. But Sweet Kiss navigated those jumps flawlessly, staying strong while Frank rode with intense focus and precision. The crowd, which had been totally indifferent, suddenly started rising to their feet.
As they approached the very last jump, Sweet Kiss was still leading. The finish line was right there. Frank was actually riding a winning race. But then, tragedy struck. According to the people watching, right as they cleared that final jump and straightened out for the wire, Frank slumped forward in his saddle. His body swayed. He had suffered a massive, fatal heart attack right there in the middle of the track.
Unbelievably, the mare, now carrying the dead weight of her rider, just kept thundering down the stretch. The crowd watched in absolute horror, realizing something was terribly wrong. Yet Sweet Kiss crossed that finish line first, winning by a head over Gimme. Frank Hayes had won.
Section 4. The Aftermath and Official Record. Bending the Rules of Racing. Attendants sprinted to the winner's circle and saw what nobody could ignore. Frank wasn't breathing. About 100 yards past the finish line, he fell from the saddle and collapsed near the judges' stand.
Track physician Dr. John A. Voorhees rushed over to examine him, but it was just too late. He pronounced Francaise dead on the scene.
This obviously sparked immediate chaos. Track officials were staring down a totally unprecedented situation. Standard post-race protocols are incredibly strict. You have to weigh the jockey, hold the ceremonial parade, and get official confirmation. Under the rigid rules of racing, if a jockey isn't alive at the finish line, they aren't considered a valid rider. By the book, this race result should have been completely voided, and the horse disqualified. Everything should have halted for an official inquiry.
But track officials did something extraordinary. Out of profound respect for Frank and the unbelievable feat he and Sweet Kiss had just pulled off, they waived every single standard protocol. No inquiry, they just declared the result official. So on June 4th, 1923, Francaise went into the books as the winner of the steeplechase on Sweet Kiss at 20-to-1 odds.
Before we move on, if you're enjoying this story or finding it helpful or entertaining, please subscribe and hit the like button.
Section 5. Legacy and Medical Context. The breaking point. Officially, the cause of Frank's death was heart failure. Interestingly, they didn't even do an autopsy right away. The track doctor's exam and the obvious visual signs, that sudden collapse and instant loss of consciousness, were deemed completely sufficient to confirm it.
The New York Times later speculated that the sheer strain on his weakened body was simply too much to bear. It was likely a compounding stack of triggers. Severe weight loss, extreme dehydration in the hours right before the race, the intense physical exertion of a full-speed, 2-mile steeplechase. Add in the massive emotional adrenaline surge of taking the lead and achieving his lifelong dream. His heart just gave out at 22 years old.
Over the decades, his legacy has been permanently cemented in racing history. He is officially recorded in the Guinness World Records. But beyond the trivia and the record books, his ultimate sacrifice hit the stable hands and trainers who knew him deeply. Here was a young guy who finally got his shot and literally gave everything for it. It really makes you wonder what ultimate lengths any of us would go to for our own lifelong dreams.
Section 6. Current status. A forgotten mare and a lasting record. Sweet Kiss, the horse who carried him across that line, faded into obscurity, with no surviving records of her racing career after that day. Belmont Park, of course, is still operating today as a premier racing venue in the U.S., and that steeplechase remains the first and only professional ride Francaise ever took. It's the defining moment of his brief life, keeping him forever in the Guinness World Records. Was it a testament to human endurance, or a tragic warning about a dangerous obsession? We'll leave that for you to decide.
Thank you for hanging around until the end. If you want to see more documented deep dives, hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next one.